fighter, are you ready? Are you ready? Let's do this!
Hi, family. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Gold Corner. Again, I just want to thank everybody for the love and support, for all the support that you're showing. Again, all the phone calls, the text messages, the just the messages themselves. Thank you so much for everything, and for all the people that are tuning in for the first time. Hit the little subscribe button here, and you can actually hear all the stories of these great warriors that have been featured throughout the last couple of weeks. Again, this channel dedicated on spreading childhood cancer awareness to speak about these warriors that have once fought this battle, and even the ones that are currently still battling right now. This is to keep our children's memories still alive, to be able to speak about them as they were and as they continue to be, which are great warriors. And just be able to have this to express ourselves and to be able to create a family. That's what I wanted to do here, to create a family, to be here for each other. So once again, thank you so much for all the new subscribers and all the new viewers. Thank you so much to the Gold Corner. I'm sure you're going to find this channel very close to a lot. If you've gone through it, if you had, a family that's gone through it, you know how difficult this can be. So once again, welcome to this week's episode. I do have Jessica and Justin Lincoln, and they are from a little suburb area close to Charlotte, North Carolina. I had the opportunity to meet them through some support groups and, of course, through Facebook. And we've been able to, chat here and there. I did follow their warrior story. I'm not going to go much into it because they will be telling their story right now. And so you're going to find this to be, a beautiful, heartbreaking story, like I always say. So Jessica and Justin, thank you so much for being a part of the Gold Corner. And, like I said, I followed your warrior story, and I know how difficult these things can be. So thank you so much for opening your heart with us and to be able to speak. So the floor is yours. We want to hear the story of your warrior.
Well, thank you for having us and letting us share our son's story. So our son, Michael James, we call him Mikey. That's how he's been known. He was 11 months old when he was first diagnosed with acute monocytic leukemia, or AML. It's one of the forms of it. I apologize, I have a cat right here. And he was 11 months old. There was nothing big in the way that it came about. I know some people have stories where their child's just sick for a long time. He had a spot on his hip that didn't go away for months, and that ended up just causing us to question. We thought he just fell down. It didn't go away, got bigger. We took him into the doctor, and they referred us to dermatology, and the dermatologist immediately ended up sending us to the ER. So when we got there, they said that they thought it was MRSA that just hadn't come out of the skin yet. And it was all night. We stayed there at this one ER, this hospital. And the next morning, we hadn't heard from anybody all night. And the next morning, a surgeon came in and just sat down, didn't even look at our son, and just told us that his blood work came back and it looks like he has leukemia, and that he's referring us off to Levine Children's Hospital to be diagnosed officially, because they can't officially diagnose there. So immediately we jumped back in the car, it was probably like 30 minutes. It wasn't too far from us. And went into LCH, and the 11th floor of LCH, we started a whole new life that day. And we spent essentially 7 months in the hospital, about a month at a time. And he went through just standard chemo. He responded right away to everything. He was in remission after the first round. His genetics didn't show anything like crazy. It was just middle of the road. It could go either way. It could be good. It could be bad. They didn't know. So we just had to do the chemo and see where it went. And he was in remission. February 26th of 2018, we had his off treatment party at the clinic, and we thought we were good. We spent the next year or so going to Disney World. We went to California, flew to see family across the country. We just, lived, I guess is the best way to put that. And then, June of 2019, he relapsed. This time he was sick a lot. But in that year he was off treatment, he had a lot of ear infections, and like a normal kid, nothing crazy. They just contributed to him having sinus problems. He had all the surgeries for that, and then ironically, before he relapsed, because he hadn't relapsed at this point, he had another lump on his leg. So we ended up getting that biopsied with his clinic, because he was shown to have what they're called as chloromas, or myeloid sarcoma, or there's many different names, leukemia cutis, there's different names for this, but solid form of leukemia. And his just appeared that way. So we were worried about his leg, and they biopsied it, and it came back just fine. Nothing abnormal, just a random, really deep bruise, which is okay. And then we even went back in, 2 or 3 weeks later, and had his normal blood work done, just because, you're paranoid. You want to make sure that everything's still good. You never want to skip those appointments. You just want them more frequently so they can keep testing. And everything was good, and that was in May. And then June, he started getting sick, and we thought it was sinuses again and all of that. One day at the very end, I took him to the pediatrician, and she saw pink eye on his back, and she noticed that his legs were a little bit more bruised up, which isn't abnormal for a normal kid, but she put the pieces together and sent us to the oncologist again, and they put us in right away. And of course, we get the news that it's back, and he is out of town, so the oncologist calls him and on the phone tells us both what I obviously already know. When he walked in the door, I knew, because we weren't supposed to see him. And Dr. Kaplan was his doctor, and of course, immediately we get sent to the 11th floor again. It was kind of surreal. It was weird in the sense of, it was like coming back home almost, because we lived there for so long. It was normal seeing the nurses again and like saying hi, and you're kind of in this shock at the time. So we went through chemo and the relapse chemo. And after 2 months, so when we first went in, it was hit or miss, but after 2 months of the chemo, he was in remission again, bone marrow clear, nothing. And then when we were doing the workup for a bone marrow transplant, he had to get his sinuses looked at because there was something in the fluid or whatever in there. And so we took him in to have that looked at and biopsied to make sure there's no infection or anything in there, essentially. And suddenly his entire face just exploded. It just swelled all around his eyes, even in his groin area. It just swelled in his lymph nodes. And finally, we ended up going back into the hospital, and immediately the doctor, he was just staring at him. He had never seen him. It was bone marrow. They hadn't seen him really yet. And I showed him a picture of what he usually looks like. And he says, huh, and he walks out. Comes back in later, and the only thing I can ask is, you think it's chloromas, don't you? And he's just like, yeah. So what do you know? His entire face and body is swelled up with chloromas at this point, and his bone marrow was clear. Now it's not, because it spread back to his bone marrow. And we're right back on a roller coaster of, we have to get him back in remission in order to do bone marrow transplant. And so we were lucky enough to get a trial that one of the doctors there was kind of spearheading, and it was kind of the last resort because it was the heart heavy chemos that you can only get so much in your lifetime, and this would have maxed him out. So if he ever relapsed again, we could never use these chemos again. So they reserved them for last. We used that, and what do you know? It worked. He went into remission quickly. He always went into remission. It just never stayed there. But from that point on, they kept us in the hospital, kept his counts down, didn't really let him recover, just kept giving him chemo rounds to get him to transplant. We did end up having a hiccup because our child likes to do everything not so fun. He ended up getting a fungus infection in his central line while we were there. So that set us back for a minute, but luckily we were able to clear it. They actually thought that was going to be the moment that, like, he wasn't going to make it. He had no counts. He had a fungal infection. We took out his central line and did all that stuff, but a couple weeks later, he was able to clear it enough to get us back on the transplant direction, and we're finally there. So the beginning of December 5th, the first week of December, something like that, he got his transplant. He went through total body irradiation and got chemos, and we did MRIs to make sure there are no chloromas. We kind of were on top of everything at this point. And he, for the most part, was doing good. And then, towards the end, he got graft versus host disease, and it was in his gut, and he got on his skin. So we did all the stuff we're supposed to be doing. And he had really bad BK virus at the time. So in order to handle BK and transplant, Cincinnati does T cells for BK virus, but you have to go there and get them. So we got his GVHD under control enough to be sent there to get these cells to help him fight this virus. So we went there. He got a ride on a private jet and go up to Cincinnati. And then we came back. Everything, for the most part, it seemed good. He was down, but to be expected when you're recovering from a transplant. And the only thing kind of weird was his gut was bigger, but with transplant, a lot of things happen that are weird, so nobody took it too far or thought too much of it at the time. At the end of January, when the BK virus kind of was fought off enough and he was eating enough at the time, and he had a G-tube, so we were able to give him feeds and he was keeping him down. We ended up going home, finally. And we spent 2 weeks at home. We came home on a Wednesday, and we spent, time here. We were back at the clinic a lot at that time. He got to see his big Christmas gift. It was the big ultimate Hot Wheels.
Yeah.
So that was exciting for him. But he was really down. He wasn't as playful. There was a few times I got him up and I was able to chase him, and he ran around and laughed. But he was just off And I kept telling the doctors that there's something wrong, like his gut's not moving. And so about a week and a half later, we went in on a Monday. So his normal appointment, they drew his labs, checked to see what percentage of his blood was showing as him versus his donor. And 2 days later, I kind of just knew. He was just acting funny, sleeping a lot. At 5 o'clock, I got a phone call from his main BMT doctor, Dr. Wah, who we love. And he basically just said that they're seeing some of Mikey's cells, and they wanted to come in first thing in the morning because obviously 5 o'clock at night, there's not anything they're going to do anyways. It's not going to be a big difference in the next 12 hours. So we kind of just prepped to go back into the hospital and see where this was going to take us at this point. I mean, you've been through the roller coaster so many times, you're kind of, all right, so the question is, what can we do here? He got his transplant. Do the cells work? Don't know. So we went in on Monday. They hadn't seen anything as far as blasts, which is how they determine if there's leukemia. It's called, for AML especially, it's blast. It's a baby cell, essentially, baby myeloid cell, and they hadn't seen any. By this time on Wednesday, they saw, I think, 8%, 6%, yeah, something like that, already in his blood. So that means it was what they like to call blasting off, which means it's growing rapidly in a very quick session. We had been through, when he first relapsed, he had over 100 and something thousand white blood cells, and majority of them were AML, which basically means he could have just clogged his entire veins and died at any time, because that's what they do. And so that's what we're worried about happening again. Of course, with this happening and him having chloromas, we wanted to check and see if he had any internal chloromas again. So we got to the hospital, we stayed the night, and the next night, we were prepping for his MRI, which was already scheduled on Friday. And on Thursday night, we noticed he was breathing more labored. So the nurse called the doctor, had him go ahead and order an chest x-ray just to make sure about what's going on. And at like 10 o'clock or so, they came in, did a chest x-ray. Next thing we know, at 11 p.m., our BMT doctor walks in the door, which at this time he's not supposed to be there. He's supposed to be home. And usually it's the night doctor that comes in, and it's not. So you know it's bad. And so he basically tells us that Mikey has something called pneumatosis, which is something that happens to newborns, essentially. It doesn't happen to older kids. It's the inflammation of the intestines. So air gets into the lining of the intestines, making it very fragile and more likely to just burst. And essentially, it'll kill you quick. So that's what's going on with his stomach. And it's putting pressure on his lungs, and so he can't breathe. So then the next question was, do we do an MRI? And the next morning, we fought with anesthesia, and we ended up doing the MRI because we thought it was the best thing, even with the risks, because if they put him under, he's basically going to stop breathing, respiratory failure, which is exactly what happened. First, after we took him down there, when I went upstairs, we were told that they weren't able to do anything. He immediately went to respiratory failure. They have to take him to the PICU. And then a couple minutes later, his doctor came in and actually said, well, they were able to stabilize him. He's good. He's on the ventilator. And we're going to go ahead and get an MRI from his thighs and up and just see what's going on. So luckily we were able to get all of what we needed. Unfortunately, it really didn't tell us anything. They said his bones have activity, which is common with leukemia coming back. And in his face, where he had the original from his relapse, is showing activity. So AML is basically trying to push out of his face bone, which again doesn't tell us anything. So we at least know it's not worse. It's not sitting on any vital organs or anything like that. But now he's in the PICU. He's on a ventilator. And then we spent the next week and a half, playing the how long is he going to make it game. They didn't think he'd make it through a weekend. Of course, he made it through the weekend. And it kind of went like that the entire time. He essentially, his entire body flooded with fluid because what was happening at this time, we stopped immunosuppressant, so his new cells were able to start fighting. And then we were giving him azacitidine, which is a chemo that basically turns the part of the cancer cell off that makes it cancer and makes it able to die. So it's kind of helping, but usually that works better with a harder chemo, and we couldn't give him that because of what his body and his gut was going through. So we just kind of watched counts for days. They do counts twice a day, and him and I got efficient enough at reading them that we would ask the nurse, what's the count this 12 hours? And we would look, and it was interesting to watch his body fight. It would knock his blast count down. It'd be 40 something. The next 12 hours, it would be 20. It would get all the way down. It would go up. It'd go down. His body was doing something. And it was trying to win. But the issue is that when your body is fighting cancer, especially that amount of cancer, it causes inflammation because as it kills the cells, it releases bad stuff. And your body's trying to get rid of that, so it inflames to flush, and then it holds on to that fluid, and you just keep holding on to fluid. And so essentially it became a battle at that point of trying to get fluid off of him. And the only drug that was really starting to work, unfortunately, causes as a side effect or a possible side effect is pneumatosis. So we couldn't give that for very long because he already had that going on. And that was healing. It's like one of these complicated situations of a circle that once you make progress somewhere else, it's going down over here. And then we just so we spent a good weekend. We're positive. We basically hammered the doctors every day, challenged them. I was looking up different stuff, and I was, can we do this scan? Can we check this? Can we, just trying to figure out everything they were trying to figure out, and challenging them as much as we could, but it got to the point his body stopped getting rid of the fluid, and it was just getting worse. And there's nothing more you can do at that point. So we had that conversation one morning on February 25th of this year. I woke up and I looked at him and I knew. The doctor on call, I love him, Dr. Reyers, he was right there with me the entire time. And then his counts went crazy overnight. his inflammation went everywhere. And that was the point they knew they couldn't go backwards. And we at that point we knew too. So then we had that conversation. You're pulled into a room and you go, didn't think I'd be here ever. It was surreal. As many times as I had thought this is a possibility, because I faced it for almost his entire life, you didn't think you'd actually get there. And we did. So there was a point that they asked, what can they do for us at this point? Like, is there anything we need? We were in the PICU, and everybody that knew and loved Mikey, we spent like 6 months living in the hospital continuously, and the 11th floor, the HEMOC team, that's who knew him, that's family. So we told him that we wanted to go upstairs and take the ventilator, and let him be with them. So we did. We wanted the nurses and everybody that was there for him to be able to say goodbye. We wanted him to be back in a place that felt like home in a weird way. Like, not the home you want, but the home you deal with and you learn to love some weird way. And his main doctor, his main BMT doctor, wanted to be there when it was time, so we had them call him. But that morning that he passed away, we knew. It was bad. He wasn't getting any oxygen, not getting rid of CO2. It was, you could tell just by looking. And once we took the ventilator out, I wanted to hold him. So my whole thing was I wanted to hold him again. And so they put him in my lap. We were ready. They took it out. And immediately he stopped breathing. They said it could take longer. And of course, it didn't at that point. And which I think I'm more grateful that it didn't last longer, because that seems worse. It was interesting that in that moment when we sat there, I had him in my lap and he's sitting off to the side at his head. It was a very foggy day, and the 11th floor is basically the top floor of LCH. And suddenly just the sun brightened the entire room in a split second. It was just that moment, I think, that we knew he was better where he was. So that's at least a comfort to hold on to, is that sign, I guess. And then we basically had some family there, and the nurses came in and out, and the NPs and PAs. And they got to say goodbye, the ones that were able to, the ones that wanted to, that were there. We sat around, and honestly, we cried, we laughed. He was a handful. He made people work for his love, and he didn't give it quickly or easily. He was known to kick me out of the hospital room all the time because he was frustrated and he wanted everybody to leave him alone, including me. So I'd have to go sit outside and wait for him to allow me back in. He would tell the nurses 5 minutes or 2 minutes, 10 minutes. He would barter with them on how long until something could happen. He was the kid that was always in the hall at all times. He always had his favorite dog. It's a little Fisher Price dog that it's kind of just his safety since he was 4 months old. He had 4 of them, of course, because going through chemo, you need more than one. And so they all got to say goodbye. I was definitely in shock. I remember going out the hall and laughing with some of the nurses that couldn't quite get their nerve up to go in there yet. And it was a weird situation. When we did leave, the nurses didn't leave him alone. And one of the NPs, Shannon, I guess she ended up going up and sitting with him until they came and got him. So he was always with somebody. But it was those last 2 weeks, threw everybody for a loop. They said his cancer was rare. One of his mutations is considered rare, which I really don't think it is, but that's what they say. They say getting chloromas is rare. Once again, I don't think that is. He made it through odds that nobody thought he would make it through, and we were constantly told that. It just, some odds you just can't beat, I guess. And that's, but just keep moving forward. He was our only child. We don't have any others as of right now. And I mean, he was 3.5 when he passed away. Literally 2 years from the day that he had that party, that end of treatment party, from the first time he passed away, that same day, 2 years later. So life's short. You just don't know what's going to happen. I would like to say that for the most part, we lived up as much as we could, even being in the hospital. We found ways to entertain him and us and laugh. We played Nerf gun in the hallway. Might have hit a few other people on accident. We played hide and seek in the hallway in a tiny little unit, because the beamed unit is tiny, and somehow we still enjoyed what we could. So I guess that's what we do now. We're trying to enjoy what we can since he can't be here. So that's kind of given us purpose, is to live how he should have been able to live. We were given this. It's only right that we live it the way that he would have. I mean, he lived carefree. I mean, despite everything that was done to him or he had gone through, he was so silly. He would do the weirdest things. He would make you laugh. It just, I mean, so yeah. So we still have to laugh. We still have to smile. But honestly, those last days will definitely always haunt. They'll always be this thick cloud that'll just darken everything, unfortunately. I mean, there's no getting away from that. Things that a parent shouldn't have to deal with. Things that definitely a child should never have to deal with. It just, I don't know. I think his cancer was definitely a big question. AML is a question mark. It has been. Actually, if he was treated now as an original diagnosis, his treatment would be completely different. He would have already had a bone marrow transplant at the very beginning. I, in my gut, already thought he needed one, but at the time, that was a bigger risk, obviously. But with the mutations now, they know that these mutations need transplants. Just the chemos are different than they used to be. They're finding more targeted treatments. And a lot of this is thanks to Target Pediatric AML and the Leukemia Lymphoma Society partnering and with the COG, the Children's Oncology Group, and the Children's Initiative that Julie Guillot is headlining. She has been amazing with getting AML looked at for children because it is considered rare. And it's treated, just throw some drugs at it and see what happens, because we don't know. I mean, I think that's a lot of children's cancers. We don't know. We'll just throw some stuff at it and see what happens. And unfortunately, it can make everything go the wrong way. We were lucky in the sense that our son was able to withstand some very harsh chemos and radiation, and still knock his cancer down. And still, I mean, there are a lot of kids out there that they have an adverse effect from just a simple chemo that nobody else does, or we just need something less harsh for these kids. It's just, I don't understand. I don't.
And it's one of these things that is extremely difficult to understand, and how people think it's so rare. And again, only 4% is given for childhood cancer research, which, you know, it's unfortunate because these great doctors get to a point where they're limited on their resources or even their knowledge on certain things, or whatever they can actually do for our children. You know, you did hit on one part right there. I had another parent also that was here at the she was on one of the episodes. She said, at what point during treatment are you doing things for your child as opposed to your child? Like, at what point do you have to differentiate and say, okay, what's actually working and what's still keeping them here? Because as any parent, we're still selfish. We want to keep our children here, but at what cost, you know? And like you said, it's unfortunate that we get to that point to where, you know, there's nothing else that really can be done, or the doctors say that we can't do anything, anymore. And that seems to be, the common denominator when it comes to all types of cancers, when it comes to our children. I don't see why they should still be, doing or being in the same treatment that they were years ago, when medicine has advanced so much. And, our children, I'm sure, Mikey would be giving you the strength when you were going through all of this, and just to be able to see them and just those smiles that you're always going to have, even though they're going through treatment and stuff. But again, that's only one part of what childhood cancer is. And that's what the public sees, these kids laughing, but they don't actually get to see the other parts. They don't get to see when they're really hurting. They don't get to see them, when they're all swollen and all of that. So this is reality, and this is our reality. And this is the nightmare that we started when your child is told or that you're being told that your child has cancer. And it's a nightmare for me. For example, it's been over 2 years and I still haven't woken up from that nightmare. And I don't know if I ever will. I'm striving to do the best that I can with God's help. And that's also, one thing that I know you all are going through right now. And it's that PTSD that you're going to have perhaps for the rest of your life because of what you all went through. Um, Justin, I like having, when both parents are here because I always ask the dads, it's a lot of the times it's we have to be the strong people, we have to be the strong ones for our family, for our children, for our significant others, for girlfriend, wives, whatever. But we hurt also, and from one grieving father to another, I know what you're going through. And unfortunately, this is a monster that we can't stop. And I know there are other parents that are going through it right now. And Jessica will ask you right now the same question. But Justin, I wanted to see if you wanted to just tell us a couple of words, whatever's in your heart right now, whatever you would like to tell other parents. I've had the opportunity, before my daughter was diagnosed, they told me, you're going to go to places and speak to people that you never imagined. Well, now I sit in front of other parents that have gone through the same thing and I'm giving them advice, and a lot of the times I need advice too, so I know that there's going to be that there are some dads currently going right now, and I have a lot of dads actually reach out to me and I talk to them, maybe on a weekly basis, and just kind of have that, brotherhood there to be able to know what each one of us went through. So anything, Justin, that you would like to tell us, maybe some advice of other parents that are going through the same thing. And I even say parents that have perfectly healthy children, because, what really got to me after my daughter passed was when parents would say, oh my God, I have to go sit through another boring soccer practice. I have to go sit through another boring, dance recital. And I would tell them, you don't know how bad I would love to go sit in front of a boring dance recital just to know that my daughter's still here. So I have, people that kind of seem to complain, and don't really cherish the things in life. So, Justin, do you want to say some words here?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, you know just as well as I do I guess the regret, that you have with just the simple things like and I've heard from from other people that like one of the best things you can do as a dad is when you come home, which now even if you're working from home, is that 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock is to disconnect that part of your life and focus on what's in front of you, and there was a lot of good times that I'd spent just laying on the floor with Mike and letting him play, really. A lot of times there was nothing for me to do. I would just sit there and just watch him. And I guess the further you get away from what we call the nightmare, I guess the hospital, things, you get complacent in how you kind of look at life, and you start to get comfortable with I guess your everyday new reality, and you kind of leave that part behind a little bit, and it's twofold. You want to leave that behind because it was, as we said, a nightmare. But at the same time, you don't want to forget, just how good you have it now and how bad, how bad it can get, So I guess, yeah. I mean, my first advice would be to, if anything, if I can add just a blink in somebody's mind about, well, maybe I could sit here for a little longer, because there are fathers out there that wish they could and they can't, as you said. So, and if it literally only adds a couple seconds to, to get somebody to play with their kid a little longer, I feel like it was a success today. I guess on another thing I wanted to mention was, me and Jess talked about it is, and there's, a lot of the advocates that we, try to work with and that are constantly out there, banging the pavement and don't get a lot of credit for all their hard work is, we toss around numbers like the 4%. But, and that 4% is huge. Absolutely. You know what I mean? Any kind of help that we can get towards research and resources to fight is big. I guess my only, rebuttal to that is, I don't, we as a society, as an American society, are, so much bigger than so many other countries out there dealing with the exact same stuff. And, I don't want our people to sit on our hands and say, well, you know what, the government should do more. Now I feel like we should do more. So like one of the things, the first things that me and Jess did was we just set up a monthly retainer that goes strictly to our cause, which is, teen child, and then we've got another organization that a buddy of mine runs that he lost his daughter as well. It's called Fight With Me, and these are both out of North Carolina. And so, but the idea is to, you could even call it like a tithe, right? But you're tithing to an organization, a charitable organization. And so that's what we do. And you know what? I guarantee you, if a lot more people did that, even just a small amount, that 4% really wouldn't be as heavy as it is, So I guess I would just want to see more people take that onus on them and, make up for whatever you feel like the government's not, contributing, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, you couldn't have said it any better. Yeah, we say, the government is, they're not doing enough, and like you mentioned, I mean, we are blessed to be in this country, and like you mentioned, I've so other countries have it way worse. I mean, there was a city in Mexico not too long ago that the government was actually giving the children just saline, and they were saying that it was chemo, because they just didn't have the resources. They didn't have chemo. So I mean, the way we are here, yes, we're blessed, a lot, but you said it right, Justin. We could do a lot more if we all stood up and we all became a voice. We could do a whole lot more, and that is what I try to do here. That's what I'm trying to do here, is to be able to make a difference. And I've said it, and it might sound drastic, but I said it till the end of my life, and if it's going to cost me my life, I'm going to make a difference for these kids, for the kids that are actually battling right now, the kids that still have that chance. Because I want to, as I mentioned on my last video, I want to be able to look at death and say, you know what, you didn't take this child. This child won this fight. You're not going to take this child. But it does take that, and unfortunately, a lot of people do turn away when it comes to child cancer. They don't want to see that. They don't want to see that reality. They don't want to think that exists. And rightfully so. I mean, prior to all of this, I did not pay a lot of attention to any organizations out there. Organizations such as the Ronald McDonald House that housed us for 10 months, without having to pay anything. I never thought of dropping my extra change when I would go through the drive-through. But it's these organizations, like you said, if you would just give a little bit, you don't know how much that little bit really goes a long way when you come together, when you're going through this. And the example you use is tithing. We do our tithes when we go to church. This is a tithing, and this is a tithing for these kids, for our future. So I think that, wow, the way you describe it, that's so awesome. Give me that information of the organizations. Are there any other organizations that you all are partnered up with, or that you might have, or that you work closely with, that you want to mention? I'll go ahead and put the description, the links on the descriptions, but if you can talk to us maybe a little bit more of those organizations. Jessica, do you?
Yeah, so we're really connected with like Fight With Me, which, like I said, that's a local family. They do a lot of stuff for the local high school, because that's where their daughter went, and then other kids with cancer in the local area and stuff. They give scholarships and everything. And then we
there's a couple organizations down here that like Ren's Wallets.
Yeah.
You got Claire's Foundations.
Claire's Army.
Claire's Army.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really big one down here.
Or Claire Parker Foundation.
Parker, yeah.
They did great. They bring meals to families in the hospital on certain days on the oncology floor. They've always been amazing, and they have like the comfort baskets for when you first get diagnosed that have everything you need, because let's be honest, you didn't mean to go in there for the next week or 4. They do some amazing things, and they help out with families with bills and such. The Leukemia Lymphoma Society, they've launched, I think in 2018, technically they launched the Children's Initiative, but it's really gained traction this year and last year. And so we signed up to do the Walt Disney World run with the Team Child, which is all the money that's raised for Team Child will go straight to the Children's Initiative. So that's amazing. So you know exactly where the money is going as for them. We've been doing a lot of stuff, and the LLS has been partnered with the Target Pediatric AML, which is a huge initiative with the COG, National Cancer Institute, and everything, trying to find targeted treatments for children with AML. And that's kind of just spearheading possible programs for other cancers in the future. They're breaking down the entire genome of the cancer cells and determining what types of mutations there are and doing all that fun stuff. And seeing what drugs we currently already have that can target them. Not making new drugs, we're just doing the traditional. Am I missing any? Oh, and then the Isabella Santos Foundation. They do amazing things around here. They're tied to the Levine Cancer Institute and the Levine Children's Hospital. They put a MIBG room up on the floor for neuroblastoma. So she was, unfortunately, she passed from neuroblastoma. So her mom's been really ramping up her foundation and doing a lot of good stuff. So we kind of have connections in these different areas around us. Trying to get more connected, I guess, is the other part. You know, when you go through this, you're kind of in that fog, so it's kind of takes a minute to figure out where you are anymore.
I guess the only thing to add with the organizations part is, it doesn't have to be a standard organization to point resources towards somewhere. I mean, like, so a lot of the companies in this country have a certain amount of money set aside that they are going to donate to charitable organizations anyways every year, and it's I believe it's still fully tax write-up, right? So I guess the idea would be, and this is why I was glad that we were able to do this with you, is to get people talking about it more and not be ashamed or not be afraid to bring that up to people in your organization, to start pointing those resources towards what we want, which is to get rid of pediatric cancer. I mean, it's no matter what kind it is. So I guess that would be my claim my ask is to just talk about it more and use whatever resources that we can, which unfortunately corporate resources go a lot farther than what me and you could ever offer. So
yeah, but yes, exactly. You're absolutely correct. And that's what I tell people, when I created this channel, is I wanted to go ahead and speak about this. I wanted to go ahead and make people aware, and I wanted to speak about these other organizations. And I say other because there's the big ones, the big name hospitals, the big organizations that you hear about on commercials and everything, which is good. They're still doing work, but there are a lot of other organizations, a lot of other nonprofit organizations that are great. And these are organizations that were not created by a big corporate office, were probably created by parents that went through it. So you know that when you're donating, you know exactly where the money's going to, as opposed to paying a CEO salary or paying for a new parking lot, as I tell people. So do your research. That's what I tell people. It doesn't matter where you donate when it comes to childhood cancer, but do your research.
Yeah. And there's another one that was actually around here. It's a very huge one. It's called Hometown Heroes of Monroe. They are started with, I think, some guys that like to ride their bikes, and they kind of fell into supporting kids, and now it's a huge thing. They basically adopt kids as they can, depending on their funds, and they help the families out through treatment. And then once you're off treatment, you're still in the family, but you're kind of on the other side of it. And then on Christmas Eve, they take all the kids and they let them run free in Walmart and grab whatever they want. They are amazing. Yeah, they do some amazing things here. Mikey was one of their kids, and so he fortunately didn't experience that, but he met them a few times, and that was kind of cool. But and then the other thing I think I want to add is the other side of what is holding back childhood cancer. It's not just the funds. It's the fact that we put adults first and not children. And these treatments have to show effective on adults before they even become anything near for children. And that can take 9 years for one drug. And then plus that for them to even be used or thought of for children. So you're thinking, I mean, there's so many possibilities out there if we would just try to move children up that line. And on the same line, adult cancers are so different. Their bodies are just so different. I mean, treatment may not work on adult, but it'll work on a kid just as quickly because their bodies are constantly repairing themselves so fast, especially the younger they are. And so that's the other part that, I mean, we have to remember whatever policies are going on, anything in the politics, and trust me, I lose my mind over politics like anybody else. But I think sometimes paying attention to those and advocating as much as we can to them to put the kids first. That's the other piece that I do love LLS for, is because they are a big advocation towards the politics side of it. And so that's another piece with the Children's Initiative. They're trying to move forward is putting kids before adults when it comes to research now, instead of keeping them behind them, which is very complicated. But that was the other piece that I wanted to make sure we.
Yeah, no, of course. Well, Jessica, Justin, thank you so much for not only sharing Warrior Mikey's story, but also being able to have this conversation about what we can do now. And of course, what we went through, our tears, our pain are not in vain. We're still going to be able to fight. We're still going to fight like we were fighting with our children when they were still here. And we're probably going to fight even harder now, to be able to help out and, to see less parents go through unfortunately what we did. So Jessica, the same thing I asked Justin, something that you want to leave us with, something, some sort of advice, maybe something you want to tell parents, another parents that are going through the same thing, another mom, and even parents that have perfectly healthy children.
It's probably going to sound weird. So I have always been the person that kind of thought through the worst case scenarios, and that helps me deal with them as I think about them. It doesn't sound like it would work, but it does. One of the things that I think in the darkest days of our fights, that kind of kept me going was our friends. They lost their daughter, way before we even met them. And I always thought to myself, how are they still alive? It was their only daughter. She was a teenager. They, watched her grow. And I always wondered, and I always thought that question in my head. And I even catch myself saying that now. And I'm like, oh wait, who am I again? And so somehow there is life. It's harder. And it'll never get easy, and I know that. But as long as you're alive, your child is always alive. Remembering them is the best way, and that, I think, is what keeps me on the darkest days. And trying to live the moments I had. When we were first in treatment, I started coming up with the little saying, this moment's my favorite. Because I wanted to remember that as much as he drove me nuts in this moment, and I'm ripping my hair out because nothing made him happy, I had that moment. And so it helped me to get through them. I mean, he was never the crazy kid. He was actually very quiet for the most part. He was very sweet. There was a point in treatment, he lost his mind. He bit the nurse in the face. Like, he was not having anything. And this was non-steroids, what we're told, associated. It was just him not being able to handle what was going on. And I kept having to remind myself, he's here. We'll calm him back down, like, sooner or later. But it just reminding myself that, this moment's my favorite. And holding on to those moments the best I can. Writing them down if you need to. Taking pictures. If your child is still alive, just take pictures. I mean, we go through videos and pictures all the time. I mean, I think it's like 12,000 pictures and videos. We just go through them, and you're not alone, I guess, is the other piece, is that your story's different and your feelings are different from ours. But at the end of the day, you're not alone in finding that pain and being in it. And there are people out there, reaching out to us. I want to help as much as I can. I don't know how helpful I am to people, but I try to talk about it all so people will talk and be willing to listen. That's probably why I'm not crying right now. It's because I'm trying to teach myself to talk about it and not cry, so more people would be willing to hear me versus that. But
well, that definitely makes you a lot stronger than me, because 10 seconds into it, I'm already crying. Well, Jessica, I asked you to give parents advice, and I am the first one to take your advice. Thank you for what you just said. Almost on a daily basis, I actually question myself, what is still keeping me going? My only child, like Mikey was, and when I get those thoughts, it's usually followed up by a message of somebody saying, hey, we just saw this story in the Gold Corner. We just want to say thank you because that story helped us out a lot, or thank you for what you're doing. And that's when I stand up and I'm like, this is why I'm still standing up. This is why I'm still here, because there's a lot of people that are looking at us that have gone through it, and they're going to see how we're reacting. I'm not ashamed to tell people that I'm broken. I'm not ashamed to tell people that I am shattered into pieces, but I'm still going, and I'm still going to go till my very last breath so I can help families and I can help children. And we are going to make a difference. I know we will make a difference together. So just again, Jessica, Justin, I don't want to say I'm sorry for your loss. I want to say I'm sorry for what you're going through, because we know that our children are not lost. We know exactly where they are, and we know that we will be with them one day again soon. So thank you so much for taking the time and sharing that story. I am going to ask you all the links that you talked about. Go ahead and send them over to me. I'll put all those links in the description when I do the description video, and when we upload this story, when we do the premiere for this story. So thank you so much for that. And I also want to thank everybody who took time to watch this week's episode of the Gold Corner, to listen to the incredible story of Warrior Mikey and everything that he went through, and what Jessica and Justin are doing right now for childhood cancer to be advocates. When I do upload this video, I will be tagging both of them. And as they said, if you need anything, if you have any questions, if you want to ask him anything, if you want to just give him words of encouragement, whatever it is, if you want to know a little bit more about the organizations that they are involved with or that they're helping with, reach out to them, especially if you're in the North Carolina area. We have a lot of viewers from all over the world, especially obviously here in the United States. But if you want to reach out, if you want to be a helping hand, especially now that the holidays are coming up, I can guarantee you we would get a care package at the hospital, and it would bring my daughter such a big smile, and I'm sure it did to Mikey, and I'm sure it does to all these kids. Whatever, as small as it is, believe me, it's making a difference, and you're bringing a smile to a child that is going through something very difficult. So if you want to reach out to them, again, I will go ahead and tag both of them so you can reach out to them and talk to them and ask them any more questions. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. And as I tell you all every week, just remember to live each day to its fullest, because tomorrow's not promised. Hug your children, love your family, pray for your children. Let's pray for our city, our state, and for our nation, because right now we need it more than ever. And just hold on a little while longer, because we're almost home. God bless you, and we'll see you next Sunday.